Hi everyone, I'm back to talk about equitable access. Part of the entire question of whether you or not you can flip your classroom is determining if all of your students can access your videos or whatever work you're having them do at home on their own time in one form or another. Before we get to those options, let's talk about ways to determine your particular student's current accessibility options. Um, and you would need to check this every time that you have a new batch of students. So typically that would be each new year or new semester for your classes. And the whole pandemic shutdown certainly affected this for many students in schools in terms of schools offering devices for students to use and so on, students needing access to online materials, etc. But still, with changes in time from that time frame even, I would highly recommend creating some type of quick inventory check on the different tools and access points that your kids have at home or in the form of a personal device that they could watch your classroom videos on. And since we just talked about creating Google Forms, that's exactly the tool that I would use. I would recommend creating a form for this purpose so that you can look through the results quickly in spreadsheet form because you're looking for some very specific answers to some of the questions. And it will help you to easily determine how many students you need to work with on this particular topic. So obviously I would include some questions of their first name and last name so you can identify the students that may not have access and you can go and talk to them. And period, if that applies to your teaching level and classes. And then I would suggest questions like, do you have internet service at home that allows you to watch videos online, like YouTube videos? Do you have a smartphone with a plan that allows you to watch videos for class? If your answer was no to both of the previous two questions, do you have any other way to access the internet to watch class videos? And I might put a yes with an open-ended response there, along with a no option for that type of question. And obviously your main concern here is if you have any students that answered no to all of those questions. And hopefully you have a solution for them. Devices they can check out from school, or a way that they can watch your videos in the library or a computer lab at school, or maybe there's a public library nearby or near their home, or maybe they have a friend that would allow them to have internet access, or a friend in the class where they could watch their videos together. Whatever the options might be, at least this tool will give you a methodology to find out who in your classes might need some help with that. Once you have a little bit more of a feel for where your kids stand on terms of their individual access, then you have some decisions to make. Of course, in a perfect world, every child would have responded that they have internet service and are capable of watching YouTube type videos at home with no problem. And if that's the response that you got from your students, woohoo, you're done. That's it. Everybody has access. You're ready to roll. You have the easiest time of making your videos available. You just post them there, put them in one place for students to access. Way easier for you. And again, maybe this is a more common situation since the pandemic. Not sure. However, in the real world, at least it may progress or have changed since the pandemic, you may have had responses all over the map. Therefore, you need to investigate this a little bit more with some of the kids that said no, that they don't have access. Perhaps even with a check with parents to be sure that they don't have access at home, or to be sure that the students understand their availability options, or perhaps merely having a discussion with that student will help them realize, oh yeah, I can access them by whatever method you suggest. But let's assume you do have a need for making your videos available in some other formats. Here is what I used to do in my classroom as some suggestion. Now, some of these are going to be dated, of course, but obviously I posted my videos through YouTube to my Google Classroom site, or Google Class site. I just made a Google site, not Google Classroom page, or set up for my class, and hope that most of my students were able to access the videos there. My second choice was to have them bring in an iDevice, and again, a little bit old technology here, but still could be possible, or their smartphone or a tablet or whatever, in order to plug it into one of the computers in my lab and then transfer the files of all the videos for the next chapter onto that device. They could then throw away the last chapter and put on the new chapter. I made a playlist of those videos and imported them into iTunes and set it up to where it was easily transferable for anybody that needed to come in and do that. They just come in at the beginning of class, find that playlist, move it to their device and it can be transferring while they're doing other things in class. Once they've done it once or twice, they've got the process down. Then it's completely up to them to make sure that they do that at the beginning of each chapter for the rest of the year. They will do it one chapter at a time, and the videos are on their device. They can watch the videos anywhere at any time they wish then. They don't even need service because it's on the device. And so if they didn't have cell service, that was fine, or Wi-Fi or whatever. My third choice for my students was to find time at school somehow to access the videos, either in my lab, in the library, or somewhere of their choosing, either at their lunchtime or we had at the time we had a built-in intervention period in our schedule that was half an hour each day, and so they could easily watch the videos within that time frame. And then my absolute last option, and again, this one's definitely dated, but it could still play a role here depending on the scenario, was that I would, and this option does require certainly some time on my part and cost, but it is to provide them with DVDs of the classroom videos. Now, again, DVDs are kind of a thing of the past with streaming services and all, but you have to have internet to have streaming services. And so again, if you're in a home that does not have internet access, then possibly you could have old technology of a DVD player still. And so again, this required some work on my part, that I had to record my videos at least a chapter ahead, so I had to stay ahead of the course the whole time. And then I would burn them onto a DVD for each chapter at a time, to where they could either watch it on a DVD player and a TV at home, or maybe a computer that had a DVD player in it at least, whether it was connected to the internet or not, didn't matter. And then they could, well, I made these DVDs fairly easily in a way. I used Macintosh computers in my lab, and so it was just easy at the time to use a tool called iDVD, create a menu, dump the chapter videos into that menu, and then just burn. At the time, I was doing around 15 DVDs out of all my classes and my teaching partners' classes. We had about 15 students that this was their preferred method to be able to watch the videos. And so I would find blank DVDs on sale at Best Buy or Office Max or something like that. They'd come out to like $0.10 a piece. I'd use my classroom budget for that. They could create an envelope out of a piece of paper to transport it back and forth from school. They'd bring that one back at the end of the chapter and get the next one, so that I could, if my lectures don't change for the next year, I can reuse those DVDs for the next year for that particular chapter. I believe this last resort of a DVD and or the student having to watch the videos at school should cover pretty much every scenario, but you may have to get creative beyond that point to make sure that every student has access. Again, it could be possibly going to a friend's house to have internet access to watch a DVD or whatever it might be. When all is said and done, though, the student has to make some effort to watch the videos. Again, it's the homework, just like any other homework. And I do like the way that one teacher put it. I'm paraphrasing how she said it here, but she said, back when I was in school, the way we did research for a class project was on Encyclopedia Britannica, before the digital age, obviously. If your family was well off enough to be able to afford your own set of encyclopedias, then you use those at home. If not, then you went to a friend's house who was well enough off to have a set of encyclopedias. If not, then you went to the public library or the school library to do those research. It was up to you as a student to figure out how you were going to get access to that information. They do have to put out some effort, okay? I don't believe it's a bad thing to have your students and or their parents take on this responsibility for their learning. Of course, that greatly depends on their age. But that's just my 2 cents on the topic. I know it's a sensitive issue with some. But again, Hopefully, one positive thing that came out of the schools shutting down and so on during the pandemic is that administration and parents had to work through making sure that students did have access to student materials for class online or in some format similar to that. And so hopefully your students do have that access. And this is maybe a completely moot point for you because your students do have. But for some, it's not. Especially if you were in my situation where you're in a very rural area, low income area, whatever it might be, some students may not. And so you're going to have to think through some of this. And so I hope I'm giving you a little bit of food for thought here, a little bit of, some ways to think around this and have your students be able to have access to your videos. And so let's look at the rest of the course and go from there.